China, South China Sea, SCS, and Southeast Asia, SEA. The basis of China's claim. Throughout dynasties, the SCS has been Chinese territory. This has left behind long historical records to prove the claim. During the last 150 years of humiliation, China first lost the sea to Western imperialists and then to Japs imperialists during WW2.
As early as 184 AD, Eastern Han Dynasty, Jianghai was then commonly referred to as the South China Sea. From 960 AD to 1279 AD in the Song Dynasty, the South China Sea was under the administration of Jiyang Army, Chongguan and Fu Dujian under Guangnan Shilu. These historical records indicate that China not only encompassed the South China Sea islands in its territories, but also clearly defined its administration level.
In 1405, Zheng He led a fleet of more than 200 ships and launched an unprecedented maritime expedition, demonstrating China's powerful capability of navigation in ancient times.
根据它政府航海图的这个画来看哦，这些你大概标出来了，你就是西沙咯、中沙咯，还有南沙这个位置，已经是标在它的航海图上面了。
在后来的发展过程当中啊，无论是宋代、元代还是明代和清代啊，都是把这个南海诸岛称之为石塘和长沙，而把石塘、长沙呢纳入到广东省群州府万州辖下。
From the 19th century, Westerners started to set foot in Nansha, but at that time they only saw the Chinese engaging in development and operations on the islands.
China Sea Pilot, a book published by the British Authority in 1868, describes in detail what life was like for the Hainan fishermen travelling between islands in the South China Sea. On May 19, 1909, as assigned by the Zhang Renjun, the governor of Guangdong and Guangxi, Li Jun, then chief of Guangdong Naval Force, conducted a mission, led 3 naval vessels, namely Fubo, Shenhang and Guangjin, departed from Yulin port of Hainan Island and landed on the Shisha Islands. They erected yellow dragon flags of the Qing dynasty to declare sovereignty over the islands they landed on and gave names to these islands. Ganchuan Island and Shanhu Island were named after their terrain. China has been exercising jurisdiction and sovereignty over the South China Sea islands, and it has fought against foreign aggression several times.
Before the end of WW2, during the Cairo meetings, it was agreed that whatever Chinese territories captured by the Japs would be returned to China.
Britain, America and China expressed their resolve to exert unrelenting pressure on Japan, compelling her to disgorge the territories she has seized and occupied, even before the First World War in 1914.
In February 1948, the Ministry of the Interior released the locations of South China Sea islands and declared to the international community both the names of the South China Sea islands and the dotted line.
For a long period of time after the announcement was made, the whole international society, including other countries surrounding the South China Sea, have not expressed any objection.
When China initiated the 11-dash line, there was no objection from the UN, not even from those founding members who were then still colonialists in SEA. When the US granted the Philippines independence in 1946, no part of the SCS was included as Philippines territory. International experts support the legality of China's claim on the SCS. They recognize that the dispute over the SCS has become a game of geopolitics in the rivalry between China and the US.
Foreign ministries, the work of the legal advisors I've explored over about 100 years. And they have repeatedly considered the question of the Nansha and the Shisha Islands. They are applying the Western standards of international law, and they come to the conclusion that China is the owner of these islands. There are pretty categorical statements by both the British and the French, and even the Americans, that the Filipinos have no claim whatsoever to any territory, shoals, reefs, or whatever in the South China Sea. The British also, in their memorandum of 1974, formal memorandum of the legal department, they reached the conclusion that the Spratlys were Chinese and no longer French, and had never been Filipino. The arbitration supports the Philippines. It says that the islands are not entitled to any maritime zone, and that therefore the Philippines are entitled to claim a 200-mile economic zone extended from the western coast of the Philippines right into the middle of the South China Sea, excluding China completely. And then Vietnam would come from the other side of the South China Sea, moving eastward, and then they would cut China off in the very north of the South China Sea. And that's a useful argument for the United States. And of course, with these countries being completely dependent on the United States for maritime military support, that basically means that it's the United States that will control 2/3 of the South China Sea.
In the 1970s, the communist government in China changed the 11- line to a 9- line as a friendly gesture to communist North Vietnam. Most recently it issued a map with a 10- line. These deviate only slightly from the original. The two Chinese governments on both sides of the strait maintain the validity of the demarcation.